podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Ospreys Eyrie. Hello and welcome to the very first Ospreys Eyrie podcast with me, Lee G, and joining me on this very momentous evening, my co-host is Darren and Iestyn. Good evening, gents.
Hello, good evening.
Evening.
So it's another part of the Rap family ready to go, and we've been trying to get the Ospreys podcast up and running for a while. So it's really good. It feels really good to actually be. And I'm saying this, and I'm going to put my hands up straight away and say, I'm only here to just get things going because I'm a Scarlet. This isn't my place. This isn't where I should be. It feels really odd doing something where I know I've got to be nice to the Ospreys for even if it's an hour tonight. That just feels wrong for me. But you boys will know that feeling having me in the room. So it's just really giving fans a voice and getting just somewhere for Ospreys fans and supporters can kind of be together, sort of a thing. So first things first, question I've been asked quite a bit: what's an eyrie? An eyrie is an Osprey's nest. It's the name of an Osprey's nest. It's where they look after their family and where they bring up. So I thought that was a good name for this. And if you compare that with the Cardiff boys, they've got Cardiff Central, because that's the only bit of Cardiff that everybody really knows apart from the stadium is the railway station. So, So I thought we'd kick off tonight and just kind of tell people who you are to start with, guys, and then we'll kick off with some rugby. So, Darren, why don't you kick off, mate, and give us a little bit about yourself and your connection to the Ospreys?
So, my name's Darren. I've been an Ospreys fan since I was about 11 years old. I grew up knowing the region, and I've played local rugby within the region. So then I went to my first ever Ospreys game, which was the cup final against Leicester Tigers in Twickenham, and then grew into a massive Ospreys fan and still following them through the tough times that we find ourselves in with everything with the Welsh Rugby Union and with the matters on and off the pitch.
Yeah, it's if you're going to work out whether you like rugby or not, if you're working out whether you're a fan of rugby, this last season was to work out whether you were a fan, wasn't it? It certainly threw a couple of challenges in a way. Yeah. So, Iestyn, what about yourself, mate? Tell us about you and your connections.
Yeah, so I grew up as an Ospreys supporter. My dad supported Neath pre-regions. So as I was growing up, I was kind of influenced by him, as every time he'd have something on the television, I'd have to watch it, and most of the time he'd have rugby on, and which has sent me to a rather slippery slope of writing about the sport, which is fun. I'm enjoying it most of the time, and I probably started to fully focus on the Ospreys was around about 2015. Obviously, I'd watched all the games on the television on and off since I was really small. But I remember my first proper memory was a 20-all draw against Glasgow in the 2015-16 season. And I'm pretty sure it was the debut for JJ Engelbrecht, who was a South African centre who only played for the Ospreys about 2 or 3 times. But so me and my dad committed to having a season ticket, and somehow I'm trying my best to get writing about everything about rugby. And I do sometimes thank the Ospreys for letting me watch them half the time.
It's weird, isn't it? We started the podcast thing 12 months ago, and we were worried at the time, would we have enough to fill an hour every week? And then as the season's gone on and our clubs have done what they've done, and you're sitting there and you're going like, right, we're going to have to cut stuff out this week because if we're going to keep it to a reasonable length. And then we at one point through last season when all the stuff was going on, we ended up doing like 2 pods a week just so we could cover everything in that was going on. And we're just like, is this how Welsh rugby's going to be like? Is this really how Welsh rugby's going to conduct itself going forward? So, yeah, it's being a rugby writer, mate. I can imagine is it's one of the. It's great. You've got lots of stuff to write about, and then you go, oh my god, have we got to go down this road again? Like and it's a nightmare. So let's talk Osprey stuff. So I'm gonna try and shut up. If you need me to shut up, boys, just say, Lee, shut the hell up, because I'm used to that. Trust me. So, like I said, my introduction is I'm not an Ospreys fan. I am a Scarlets fan, but don't let that get in your way. I'm also a rugby fan, and I have got mates who are. In university, I spent the last year of university with 3 massive Neath fans. This is pre-regions time. And when I didn't even say I was a Llanelli fan because I wasn't a Llanelli fan at the time. And I just said I'm from Pembrokeshire, West Wales. Oh, Christ alive. That was every drinking game. I just had fines because I wasn't a Neath fan and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, I know the passion that comes with being from that part of the world. So, let's have a little chat about the end of last season or last season as a whole and how you felt it went. And let's just get a sense of where we are now. So Iestyn, how did you feel last season went? Well, the highs and lows and the season as a whole?
A roller coaster would be best described the Ospreys over the last year or so, because it has been a lot of quite a couple of downs, but then there's the odd moment where you went quite up and you thought that's quite rather optimistic. The start of last season, you could say it was rather unfortunate with a draw, but 2 draws and a 1-point defeat in the first 5 or 6 games. And you're scratching your head at the time thinking you might need those points just in case you're losing out on a top 8 battle or maybe a Welsh Shield battle. And then something bizarre happened in the middle of the season after a defeat against Montpellier and defeat against Leicester rather. The Ospreys went to Montpellier. Nobody stood them a chance, and they won out in France, which was rather bonkers. And then it turned out to be a really good festive period for them. They beat the Scarlets on Boxing Day. They won at the Arms Park on New Year's Day. They ran Leinster very close the following league match. Then they backed that up by doing the double against Montpellier, then playing a game against Leicester, which lasted about 90 minutes. I think I aged considerably when the clock went red, whilst being at Welford Road, and they somehow won that. And then you're in the knockout stages of a Champions Cup when you're somewhere in about 12th or 13th in the league, and you're scratching your head thinking, how on earth did this happen? And then the Saracens game came up upon us, and which was sandwiched after a record league defeat away at Munster, which wasn't a fun Friday night. And then they pushed Saracens for about an hour in a really brilliant game. And then obviously the injuries took its toll and they kind of fell off the cliff a little bit. And then the end of the season was kind of a little bit disappointing after some performances, where the Edinburgh game, which was quite underwhelming, they conceded a bonus point try after about 20 odd minutes. And then a defeat then on Judgment Day against Cardiff kind of really summed it up in a way, that there were some highs, but there was quite a few lows as well.
It was strange, wasn't it, that the difference in performance in Europe and in the URC, it seemed like 2 completely different teams, didn't it?
Yeah, it did at times, and Toby Booth even alluded to that they were a cup side, as when they had the internationals available. Maybe not so much next season, as they've lost quite a few. But when they had the internationals available and a string of games, that's when the Ospreys performed the best they had all season. And yes, the first couple of games of that season was a little bit unlucky, but the best block was around Christmas. And part of me, with all the budgets being cut, a little bit disappointed as they couldn't really add to that quite a good squad, and it's a bit of a shame that they lost so many. But on the flip side, there's quite a few tidy youngsters coming through. A couple of them I'm good mates with, but which kind of puts bias out the window. But yeah, it seems rather exciting. The under-20s World Cup in the summer had quite a few Ospreys boys in that squad. So yeah, maybe you've lost quite a lot of experience and a couple of players you probably wanted to keep. But it's nice to see younger talent coming through, and maybe they get an opportunity in URC and the Challenge Cup next year.
So, Darren, what did you make of last season? What were your highs and lows from last season?
Well, like Iestyn alluded to, how can a team finish 13th out of 16th in the league and then have an unbelievable European success nearly, and go from an okay start to the season? Obviously, should have probably beaten the Scarlets, because we had practically a full Wales team going back at the start of that game, and I was there, my first time ever down west, shall we say, and I'll leave it at that. But yeah, we drawed against the Stormers, and then like Iestyn said, something just happened in a season, and then brilliant away victory against Montpellier. No one, even myself, being a supporter for this many years, thought a top French team like Montpellier, because all top French teams on the day are like the French team, national team now, they're just unstoppable. But we managed to pull a victory out of that. And then, the game against Sarries, like Iestyn said, got away from us, which was a bit disappointing, because to do the double over Montpellier, yes, lose to Leicester, but then beat them, then play Sarries, and then, having that, well, our biggest defeat of the season last season, losing 58-3 to Munster away in Ireland, is never good. And then the following week, then playing Saracens at their ground, on the day they're a top side. They might have had their difficulties over the last couple of seasons with financial fair play, but they've got some good talent, and we were just unlucky not to come away with that game with a victory or even come close in the end. And like a roller coaster season, but we got to move forward and hope that next season we can push on with these youngsters.
So let's look at a couple of players that have left and have joined, and things like a lot more have left than have joined, obviously, as is the case. But I mean, the big name leaving is Alan Wynne-Jones, but yeah, I know how much of an influence he is around the place. But how many games did he play last season? Is it really that big a loss? I suppose if he's not playing for Wales now, that does make it different. But how big a loss will he be just as an influence around the park, an influence around the club more than on the park? Which one does he affect most? Yes, then let's have you first on that one.
Well, in fairness to AWJ, he did actually have quite a bit of game time last season. Looking back, that he had from Six Nations onwards, he played quite a bit, which was he played against the Dragons, then Saracens, then he finished off the season then, and you're thinking, it's quite a bit of game time for him. He might still have something in him, but I think the harsh reality was with Rhys Davies coming through. I for one, I wanted to see Adam Beard and Rhys Davies in the second row together, and obviously we had a couple of games, the 2 European wins. We had Adam Beard, AWJ, and Rhys Davies at 6. And whilst at Welford Road, AWJ did steal the odd line out, and was a little bit of a pest in around the breakdown and the mall. I think it might have been a sensible idea to maybe start with Beard and Rhys Davies just to get that partnership going. I think they're 2 very good players. I think Rhys Davies is quite underrated in my opinion, and I think if he had bit more game time in that second row, alongside Beard, when instead they were playing him at 6, and at the end of the season they had Rhys Davies at 6, Ethan Root at 7, even Dan Lydiard at 7 at a couple of occasions, and it just felt like that maybe you could have had Rhys Davies in the second row, and it might have been maybe something to look ahead to in future, even with AWJ still at the club.
So Darren, Iestyn just said there about another kind of club legend that's left. Lydiard gone home to the Dragons as well. How much influence around the club as that? I mean, you look at how long those 2 have been playing, the experience that they've got. They're both similar in the sense that they're quite quiet most of the time, and when they need to make a noise, they make a noise, sort of a thing. So how much impact will losing both of those 2 have on the rest of the team? What do you think, Dan?
Well, I think Alun Jones, he speaks for himself. You can say, well, he's obviously a one club team player, because he's been with the Ospreys so many years. Dan Lydiard, obviously brilliant talent, hinged by injuries, because he seemed to come into the team for a bit, then he picked up a nasty injury, or in the last time he played for Wales and he came back injured to us, so that hampered him playing. Obviously renowned for his chop tackle, which is a speciality. But yeah, like you said, I think they both can be a huge loss. Mainly more Alun Jones, because he's been there since the start, and not only in the dressing room where they can motivate the players, but on the pitch. He's like a second referee sometimes, isn't he, Alun Jones? But yeah, they both I did my research this afternoon for coming on, and the Ospreys have lost, like you alluded to, more have gone than come in. The Ospreys have lost 22 players in this summer.
Oof. Have they actually published a leavers list? Because everyone else has published a leavers list. So you've got,
The Ospreys haven't actually. I think we're the only region in Wales that hasn't actually physically said this is the players that have left the region. Obviously, we've had a few players announce retirement from us, like Elvis Tyone, Scott Baldwin, and Bradley Davis. But then you've had this is where I found out how many players have actually left us on a rugby transfer, which has got like all the teams retained and release list for the whole URC, and that's where I found out that 22 players have left us, which is quite staggering.
A massive amount. Well, what I want to know, right, when Elvis announced his retirement, was there a big sign out the front that said Elvis has left the building?
No, but that would have been one way to announce his retirement. But
yeah,
the Ospreys media are not on the ball 9 times out of 10.
So, Iestyn, who else have they lost that they're really going to feel the effect of this year?
I think one of the biggest losses would have been Ethan Root. He's obviously joined Exeter. And funnily enough, I spoke to Toby Booth in Edinburgh Airport after the Edinburgh away game at the end of last season. And I'm not going to share that much detail of what we spoke about, but one of the main points was how much that that Ethan Roots will be missed at the Ospreys, because his development has kind of kicked on in Swansea since he came from New Zealand, and obviously now he's gone to join Exeter, and I think he scored in his debut in the Premiership Cup. I couldn't remember if it might have been either Bristol, I think they were playing, and yeah, you look at that and the way he's been developing slowly. And I remember spoke to my dad about this last season. He comes on, he might make an odd error, but he'll make up for it in other ways. And against Saracens, I thought it was his best performance in an Ospreys shirt, because the opening 20 minutes, he was superb. And I think it kind of worked with the blend of the back row that day with him, Tipperick and Morgan Morris at 8. And I think he made 2 massive hits. I can't remember who they were on the Saracens players, but one of them led to an intercept, which led to the try by Kieran Williams. And the other one gave him a penalty, which Owen Williams kicked for 3 points. So you kind of look back at that and you're thinking, that's a real big loss. And I think Roots would have been in the starting shirt at Blindside Franca next season. And I think he'd have kicked on a little bit more.
It goes to show, doesn't it, the effect that all of the financial stuff it puts players off. It makes them feel uneasy. And like I say, if he'd have known Lidget was leaving, probably a better chance of keeping him, if you know what I mean. And because all everybody wants is game time. They just want to put the shirt on and run out as many times as they can. So yeah. So Darren, what about players that are staying then? Who's the most influential player that we're kind of happy not to have lost?
Nicky Smith.
That's nice and sharp, isn't it? That's down the line. There we go.
Yeah.
So
there was one point that, sorry.
No, go on, tell. Why is he that important to you?
Because he was linked with a move to the English Premiership, a move to France, even Japan at one point. And I thought, if we lose, we all had an inkling that Alvin Jones would go, Rhys Webb, Anscombe, all these players, because of the cutting the squad sizes down. And I was like, right, who's going to be next to go? It's either going to be Kieran Williams or Morgan Morris. Like Iestyn said, with Ethan Roots going, that was a big loss, because when I watched him in Swansea last season, for all the games we played down there, he was superb. But the one player that I was praying that wouldn't get snapped up was Nicky Smith, because he might not be like fans' favourites on all this, but last season the Ospreys had one of the best scrummaging front three in the league for however many games. We dominated scrums left, right and centre, and then you had the Scott Baldwin and Tom Francis coming on second half and just continued. But Nicky Smith for me had to stay, and I'm so glad that he has re-signed with the Ospreys for however long he's here for.
So you said a name there that just completely went out my head that he'd even left, which is strange because he's been in a lot of trouble since he's gone. So explain Rhys Webb to an outsider, because a lot of us outside of the Ospreys don't get why Ospreys people like Rhys Webb. And with all the stuff that's gone on now over in France, how does he sit within the Ospreys supporters kind of now? So Iestyn, how do people rate Rhys Webb now?
I think it's quite mixed now, if I'm being brutally honest. He'll obviously have his supporters. It's like that with every player that's ever played the game. But I kind of turned for me at some point last season, because Webb's against Montpellier at home, I think Webb started quite bright, and then he got thumped in a tackle by, I think it was Anthony Boutier. So he went off, and Ruben Morgan Williams came on as the replacement, and he settled in quite well, and he had a good game. He's solid, and then obviously went up to Welford Road, and then when the Ospreys won, and he was solid. Then again, I'm pretty sure he played the full match in Leicester. And I think that's what kind of turned it, in my opinion. There's many Rhys Webb fans out there, and but for me, I always thought it could have wanted to see a little bit more of Ruben Morgan-Williams. Obviously, when the quick line-out happened in Saracens, which basically killed the game off, it was a bit of a downer on him then. But myself, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of Ruben Morgan-Williams, but you could see why Webb was starting. The experience and the fact that he's a Welsh international is probably the reason why he'd probably start most of those games last season. Even we saw it in the red shirt then against Italy. I thought he was good then, but for myself, I thought it should have been a little bit more of Ruben Morgan-Williams, and hopefully he gets a chance to kick on in the starting shirt next season.
Yeah. So what about you, Dak? Because I say, when as an outsider looking in, whenever I talk to Ospreys, and it does seem, I don't want to sound sexist on this now, women seem to like him more than men. But is that because he was a bit of a showboating pretty boy, or where does it sit? Were you a fan?
Oh yeah, since I have ever supported the Ospreys, I am Dan Biggar was up there, Shane Williams, Rhys Webb was always up there. But yeah, I think he was like a ladies' man, like talking years ago now with Gavin Henson, with the famous like gel look going, like he loved the attention. But Rhys Webb, obviously he's come under scrutiny the last couple of weeks with the boss gone over there. But like I always say, you can't say he's guilty unless proven guilty and all that. But yeah, obviously Rhys Webb famous for his famous dart. He spots a gap and then he just dummies the ball and just runs to the line and he's gone and he's away and he's scoring for us. But last season I did see glimpses of a Rhys Webb that I wasn't 100% sure of, like giving the ball away from in the Sarries game that Iestyn said. But last season I was down the Swansea.com stadium, as it's called now, and we played one of the South African teams, and I can't remember who it was, but the Ospreys had a scrum and Rhys Webb just threw the ball straight into I think it was their number 9's hands, like literally about 5 meters out from our line. And I was like, this is not the Rhys Webb I know. And he just didn't react to like, oh shit, I passed the ball and he scored. And I was like, what's going on here? Like, but yeah, I'll always be a Rhys Webb supporter. If he's guilty, he's guilty. If he's not, he's not. In my eyes, Rhys Webb, for like everyone's got their critics of players, but for me, Rhys Webb has always been an Ospreys player in my eyes, and he'll remain loyal to the region. And he came back from that stint in France, so it just goes to show that he wanted to come back when he did. And would he still be here now, even if we had to cut down on squad sizes? I'm not too sure, but only time will tell. But good luck to him out in, I think, if France he's going, is it? I'm not quite sure if a team has been announced, but yeah. But
it's if they let him play anymore, isn't it? It all went quiet after it was it was announced on the day before the World Cup kicked off, wasn't it? And
yeah, it was on the Queep, and Beardrich just they took it down later on, but they accused the WIU of supplying Webb with some sort of drug or something really bizarre. That was. It was about 48 hours before the World Cup started. I thought, oh, brilliant! This is it was when Wales played England in Twickenham. It was on the same day.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, you do kind of sit there and think, oh, here we go again. It's Welsh rugby off again. Yeah, it was one of the more bizarre, but it's gone quiet. They said it'll take 2 weeks to sort out, and nobody said boo about it since. So
I thought they had some sort of court hearing or some hearing about it, which was like 2 days after on the Monday, because the news broke on the Saturday. But nothing's happened since. Biarritz have continued playing games in the Pro D2 without Webb, and Sam Davis, funny enough, is having a really good spell out there. Put myself on a tangent now, and but yeah, it's all seemed to be gone really, really quiet. It's a bit of a mystery.
Yeah. Well, let's focus on the Ospreys then, and let's look at who's actually come in. So, you boys are going to have to tell me who's in, because, like I say, it's not my place. So, who's coming in? I mean, plenty of guys going out. Who's actually coming in to the Ospreys? So, Dar, let's start with you. Who's coming in, and what do we know about them?
So, we have currently got 4 players coming in for next season. We've got a hooker in Ethan Lewis. I'm not really sure of him, but hopefully I'll have a better understanding in the season. He's come from Saracens. A player returning, which I'm glad to see, because yes, Ethan Roots will be a loss, but James Ratty is returning from his stint in Cardiff. We got an upcoming scrum half in Cameron Jones. Previously played for Glasgow and the Jersey Reds, I believe. And then we have got Dom Morris, who is a centre, who is on loan from the Saracens for the season. So yeah, 4 boys so far. There is rumours that I've heard that there may be 1 or 2 more, but I'm not 100% sure about that yet.
So what about you? Yes, do you know any more about the people coming in?
Not much. Obviously, Ethan Lewis has come from Saracens after starting his career at Cardiff. You know, you don't get picked up by a team like Saracens if you don't know what you're doing, basically. But so it could be quiet optimism about him. Dom Morris had a bit of a injury hit a couple of seasons at Sarries, so I think he'd probably be looking for some game time, which is a bit of a good thing, because the Ospreys were lacking and probably another centre with Michael Collins going. Ratty, I think we've all seen James Ratty amongst us in regional matches. And obviously, started off the second row, now moved to number 8. Cam Jones seems an interesting one. I don't know much about him. And there's also Luke Davis as well, who's joined from after being released from the Scarlets. He's another scrum half. So just both during more options at 9. So there's not much about these new recruits coming in. But Toby Booth's big on giving younger players an opportunity. And whilst you might think Ethan Lewis might not be that young nowadays, I think he's a bit older than maybe what you'd call a youngster. But Booth is known for giving younger players an opportunity to showcase what they got.
I think it's one of those things we're all going to have to get used to. Is signing big names just isn't going to be a thing anymore. If anything, it's going to be developing a big name and watching them walk out the door at the end of the contract. It's going to be a hard couple of years until Welsh rugby really gets itself back on its foot. But so, I mean, lots of I say lots. some really good young talent coming in. How do you see this season going? And you know, when I'm talking around the other sides, the other teams, everyone's a little bit worried about injuries. It's if you only get 1 or 2 injuries, then you know you're really up against it, especially Six Nations time and stuff like that, and World Cup time. So how thin is the squad, and you know where would you like to see a bit of extra bulk? So yes, then let's start with you. Where do you think needs a little bit extra?
Well, due to World Cup selection, I was thinking that the Ospreys would need probably an extra fly half, but there's Owen Williams hasn't gone to France. He's come back and he's in the fold, which is quite exciting. His signing last season was rather pivotal, and yeah, him and Kieran Williams is a really solid 10-12 combination. Alex Cuthbert is back in training. He'll probably feature in the wing. So you're looking at the backs and you're thinking there's quite okay depth. He probably, me being a little bit greedy, would probably want an extra centre in there, an inside centre, as people are not so sure where Dom Morris is going to play. Owen Watkins probably will be playing a bit of 13 next season. So maybe me being really greedy would probably want to pinch a 12 or something. And maybe someone in the front row as well. You've got plenty. You've got the likes of Gareth Phillips, Rhys Henry, who's hands down the greatest rugby player ever to exist. But I probably would want maybe one more in the front row. Obviously, the budgets probably make that a lot harder than what I personally want. But yeah, it kind of feels like this is what we're going to have. And in fairness, the Ospreys, they don't look as worse as feared. When you look at the players that have departed, and when you add the internationals back in from the World Cup, I think the first 15 looks quite solid, I think. But obviously, when the internationals go away, it's going to be a little bit tricky.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? You want to push your boys on to play for Wales because that's everyone's dream, and then you sit there and you go, oh well, maybe if you could not play quite so many games, maybe if you could have a bit of dodgy, go get your cap and then come back, because it doesn't. It puts club sides under a massive amount of pressure. So Darren, what have you made of it? What do you think? Where are the vulnerabilities and where are the strengths in the Osprey squad at the minute?
So I've been doing my research again this afternoon, just brushing up for tonight, and we seem to have. Let me just double check. We seem to have 8 props for us next season. But the one area that worries me is we've only got 2 hookers down on our squad list, Sam Parry and Derry Lake. So hopefully we can get another hooker, or one of the props can play hooker. Hooker, yeah. And then scrum half seems to be sorted. 4 backs are looking good. Like Iestyn said, maybe one more centre, maybe. 4 back seems to be nailed on in Max Nagy, in my opinion, because last season he played there, and then obviously Kai Evans came in there towards the end of the season. But yeah, we got some good options looking at the squad list that I've got in front of me. And talking about squads cutting their squads down, cutting them down, the Ospreys, yes, some of them might be academy players, but on paper, we have got 42 players that could play for the Ospreys next season.
Yeah, it's how many of them are academy, isn't it? That's been the big change this year, the academies, and I know academies about to go through a massive overhaul with licensing and standards. At the minute, an academy is an academy. You just say anyone that's under 18 or under 21 or whatever age group you want to put on it, that's our academy, and we'll give them an academy contract and all this kind of stuff. But there's no real rules about what an academy is and how you should treat people and how people are looked after and stuff like that. So I know I've spoken to a couple of people that are key in how academies are going to change over the next couple of seasons. But so, yeah, it's how those academy players in the Ospreys are looked after, how they're developed, how they're nurtured. And I'll be fair, now you might want to record this, I am recording it, but you know what I mean? You might want to because this is a genuine compliment coming from a Scarlet to the Ospreys. I think the way the Ospreys manage their academy is actually really good. Really do. I think Mike Ruddock has been a huge influence there and has done a lot of good work, not just practically, but with the softer stuff about how you talk to players, how you develop players, and how you bring them through. So yeah, I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one, boys. Yeah, you're on there. So yeah, it's interesting you say those two hookers, because they're two of the top 4 hookers in Wales. So I can't see Ken Owens coming back into the Welsh setup for the best will in the world. I don't. So you've got Ryan Elias, and then you've got Elliot Dee, and then you've got Sam Parry and Dewi Lake. So Six Nations, if either Elliot Dee or Ryan Elias is injured, you boys haven't got a hooker, because both of your boys are away with the Welsh camp, and that really, really brings it home, doesn't it? It's like how do they expect clubs to function now? You boys got to be in the market for another hooker somewhere. You've got to be looking at the World Cup and going, we'll have him. Is there anyone that you've seen that you've gone, I quite like the look of them in an Osprey shirt?
Chile's Diego Escobar looks rather good from what I've watched a bit of Chile. So especially in their first game against Japan, I thought he was quite good. And if we could pinch someone, it probably would be him. And but Lewis Lloyd, who's in he's probably in the transition squad between the academy and the senior squad. I'm pretty sure he started the majority of the World Cup games for the under-20s in the summer. So I think there's probably him if everything went wrong with Dewi Lake and Sam Parry, if injuries crept up. I'm sure he would be used in some capacity. And I'm sure Toby Booth does like to pinch someone from the Gallagher Premiership, especially at hooker. First, it was Todd Gleave about 2 or 3 seasons ago, who played about 20 minutes for the Ospreys in the Rainbow Cup. And then last season, they pinched the older brother of Luke Cowan-Dickey. I want to say his name was Tom, and he played a couple of times. So Toby Booth might drag someone in on an emergency loan deal if it all went wrong. But I think Lewis Lloyd is certainly one to keep out for, because there's not many in that hooker position. So if he gets the opportunity to play at the URC, he can really show his stuff, and he looks quite quick too.
Yeah, it might actually be the making of some players, because we've been complaining for so long that we don't give young players an opportunity, and now they're almost going to have to. They're going to have to be given more opportunity, and you just hope that they get an opportunity against Zebra or Benetton rather than Leinster and Munster. Do you know what I mean? Or the Stormers. So yeah. So Darren, what have you made of not summer preparation? So you're going into the Dragons game on Saturday, isn't it? What are the expectations going into that game? I haven't seen a team list come out yet. I've seen a Dragons team list, but I've not seen an Ospreys team list. So maybe you guys have run out of paper. Maybe that's why there's no there's no leavers list and no team list. You run out of paper.
No, I think they're just going to play all 42 players on Saturday and just go with that. I think the squad rotate like every 12, 15 minutes and give everyone a run out. And then when the season actually starts for the Ospreys, they're like, oh yeah, he was good during that Dragons game. Let's pick him this week. And then, yeah, so it's all going to work out for us. It's going to be fine. The Ospreys are going to finish top 8 and all these young players. And then you'll have the Scarlets fans and all the Munster, Leinster fans going, oh, look, they lost Alun Jones. They should be crying. They lost Rhys Webb. Gareth Anscombe, probably the best 10 in Wales currently. But no, all these youngsters coming through, and they've done absolutely amazing with squads being skin tight this season. But no, the Ospreys, with their 2 hookers, have done fantastic all season, and they have shone in every competition going. It's going to be fine. We're going to be up there with the Leinsters and Munsters and Stormers and everyone this year. It's going to be great.
See, that's the kind of blind optimism that I love in Welsh supporters, and it's all over. Like every club has got a couple of people like you, Darren. I don't care. I don't like Dragons, full of them.
Yeah,
because it's like it's not like the Dragons can get any worse. Let's put it that way. So everyone in the Dragons is really positive about having a really good season this year. So yeah, I mean, I love the optimism. I really do. But so, Iestyn, your thoughts on how this season's going to go and your expectations for this game on Saturday?
I haven't got that much expectation as Darren, but yeah, it's nice to be back. I suppose it's been quite a long layoff for the regional rugby. It's sometimes you do miss it, and I think I have over the last few months, despite the World Cup. But yeah, it's an exciting platform for young players to develop. This season especially. But credit to Toby Booth, he's jump started on that a little bit, given appearances the likes of Rhys Henry, Garen Phillips, Hugh Sutton in the second row, he's started the odd URC game here and there. Harry Deeves in the back row, who can throw into the line now just in case the hooker position becomes a bit of a problem. Jack Walsh is another fly half. This seems quite exciting, and if you add them to the likes of Alex Cuthbert, Owen Williams, Kieran Williams, Justin Tipperick's going to be around, Morgan Morris. The start of the season looks quite a tidy team, and that's ignoring the internationals that are currently out in the World Cup. One player I am looking forward to seeing come back is Matt Prothero. I think we've missed a bit of spark from him over the last year or so. He's had quite a bit of a rotten luck with injuries. He seems to come back from injury, and you slowly build up match fitness, then he gets injured again. So I think he's in and around the selection for the Dragons game on Saturday. Unfortunately I'm not there. I do really rate Rodney Parade. My dad thinks it's the best away trip of the season, so we try our best to make it. Sat in the, I can't remember the name of the stand it's called now. It used to be called the Hazel stand, and we still refer to it as that. As that was my first away game watching the Ospreys, was the 10-0 classic in 2017, which was fun and games to say the least. But yeah, unfortunately I'm not there this weekend. I'm at the Knoll, funnily enough, to watch Pontypridd against Neath in the Welsh Prem, so that'll be quite exciting. But back to the Ospreys, I think you want a little bit of optimism. I'm not going to say they're going to lose all 18 games, they're going to finish bottom, but if they can compete as the top region, potentially win that Challenge Cup, the European knockout match that they desperately need to get off their back, I think being in the Challenge Cup probably a little bit more suitable for them this year, because I think if they were thrown into the Champions Cup, I think it would have been a little bit underwhelming compared to last season. So maybe the Challenge Cup could provide that European knockout win that they've been desperate for, which has just never come. So yeah, slightly optimistic. They could finish top region, then they could finish third best region. It could be another roller coaster.
It's one of those things, isn't it, where everybody's in the same sort of boat now. Nobody's been able to buy their way out of trouble. Ospreys did it, 10, 15 years ago, whatever. Cardiff started doing it the last couple of years. They brought in, Falatau and Williams, and they had like about 12 open side flankers that could all play for Wales. So it has kind of leveled the playing field. Unfortunately, it's leveled it below where everybody else is. But like you've seen today, Jersey Reds going to the wall as well. So, I think maybe rugby as a whole might be in for a bit of a few tremors, where it's only going to take one Premiership side this year, one English Premiership side this year, to announce that they're in financial trouble, and the whole thing over there starts to shake, and they sneeze, we catch a cold, sort of thing. So yeah, I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for all regions, but I think is it the right thing to do? It probably is from a financial point of view. It's right from a financial point of view and for the long term to make sure that the clubs, all 4 regions, survive the next 5 years. If you look at it that way, okay, so maybe success might not be what we all want it to be, but I'm convinced at least one of the regions is going to have a cracking season. That's just going to come out of the blue. Everything works. It just, every time you throw a ball, 3 players are there and everything just works, and there's going to be a European run and all of this kind of stuff. So, yeah, I hope, I'll be honest, I hope it's not Ospreys because that would kill me. But, I'd love to see somebody have that run. I'd love to see Welsh sides actually show a bit of mettle over the next kind of 2 seasons and really start sticking it to some of these bigger sides, because I think we can. I said we've had so many players come through the system that either come through too late or come through and just constantly getting injured, and now that mindset might change where actually we've got to look after them a bit better and prepare them better from a younger age. So yeah, interesting times ahead, gentlemen. Interesting times ahead. So we're just going to finish off tonight then with a quick chat about the World Cup, just to make sure we end on a positive, make sure it's a smiley one at the end of our first pod. So obviously, nobody saw this coming from Wales at the start of the World Cup. So we live on the crest of a wave. So Darren, what have you made of it so far? What's been your high point so far, mate?
Well, Wales getting through a group of Fiji and Australia that no one, like you said, expected us to even finish. Finishing the top 3, even going into the World Cup. All the problems on and off the field, financial issues, and then we've just put Australia to the sword, put more pressure on Eddie Jones, beat Fiji. Could have maybe won a bit more against Portugal, but a win's a win at the end of the day. And then, Wales, the first team to qualify out of all of the teams playing in the World Cup, which I'm like, is this the Wales from 10 years ago? Or is the off the field trouble, passing and Gatlins, just forget about it, play rugby, show them we're a team of war and ball and it's still going strong, and Wales are gonna get to a quarter-final of the Rugby World Cup and maybe get to a further stage. Who knows? But yeah, who knows? At this point, we could win it and show everyone that Wales have their differences and we are still the best nation around.
See, that Ospreys optimism that you're going to end up and do this, that kind of peaked out a bit there with Wales. We might make it to the semi-final. I was expecting at least a final out of you there, Darren, with total confidence, absolute confidence. So, Iestyn, what have you made of it so far, mate?
Well, I predicted Wales to get out of the pool, which is something. You can roll the tape back if you want. I did some quarterfinals, so I'll take credit for all that. Thank you. But yeah, I don't think many expected to be having 2 bonus point wins and then putting 40 points on Australia. My first reaction after the Australia game was, I'm a little bit disappointed we didn't get 4 tries. But looking back, I watched it a second time and I wrote up my piece about it. That's an awful plug, but we did that. But when you look about it, you don't get bonus points for winning knockout games, do you? The way that Wales handled the second half in particular, just kick in 3 points. 10 minutes ago, just take a drop goal if needed. Good, happy days. So the quarterfinals are a bit of a mystery because I don't have a clue what Argentina are doing. They can beat Australia, they can run South Africa close in South Africa, then they produce a really weird performance against England and lose by 17 points, and you're scratching your head thinking, how did this happen? And I'm sure Michael Cheika will try his very best to get a tune out of that side when the quarterfinal comes out, albeit they could easily be knocked out by then, because Pool D is a bit of a lottery at the minute with Japan and Samoa, which they're currently playing right now as the time of recording. So there could be one of 3 teams there that Wales could play in the quarters. It of course is more likely to be Argentina, as they picked up their win against Samoa last week. But yeah, I don't think many expected it in this fashion. I expected maybe a nervy 1-point win against Australia, which would have been fine in my book. But to walk out by winning by 34 points was just a real good start.
Yeah, it was weird being that comfortable at the end. We're just not used to the game being that comfortable at the end.
I was still waiting for Curtly Beale to come out of retirement and score a winner like in 2012, because that was probably one of my first ever few games of rugby, and that happened. So it kind of said, this is what you've got for the next 10 years. So
I'm old enough to remember David Campese doing it, mate. So it's a generational thing. There's always someone that it does just seem to be that against Australia, it's always just been a tight game. It's always been a close game. And then, like I say, I'm going to take credit for predicting a massive win for Wales, which I genuinely did on the Rap podcast. I predicted. I could just feel in Australia more than Australia imploding more than Wales kind of doing really well. But yeah, you could just see that there's something not right in camp. The body language, the language in the press conferences after, and that's when they win. And then they, it just didn't feel right. And I just had a feeling that there's something behind the scenes going on. The press in Australia are just waiting for any excuse to have a go at Eddie Jones and rip him to bits, and the rest of the world is going, here you go, we'll give you this, make the most of that then. So yeah, you could just feel it coming. And Wales are playing no risk rugby. It's and as much as I love high risk rugby. I love seeing creative stuff and balls going around and ball behind the back and all of that kind of stuff. And it's lovely to watch, but it doesn't win you World Cups. And I think at some point we will move from no risk to. So we'll do a risk assessment somewhere, and we'll find the places where we can risk it a little bit more, which is essentially what Ireland have done. Ireland went from playing no risk, kick everything rugby and just playing in the opposition 22 and tackling the hell out of everything. And they've developed an attacking game and a creative game that is actually, it's brutal against South Africa, but it's quite enjoyable to watch against the lesser side. So, yeah, I think that's where we need to head. But for now, like you say, it's just enjoying the fact that we're not getting stuffed. It could have been so much worse, so much worse. But
yeah, I was very glad that that it's not gone down to the last game, because my first game in the press box in the Principality Stadium was against Georgia last November, and that we all know what happened there. So I'm really glad that it hasn't gone down to the last game, so we can kind of relax a little bit. Nothing against Georgia, but we're through. That's what we needed to do, and we can maybe experiment a little bit more against Georgia. So I'm very glad that it's not gone down to the final game of the pools, because I'd have been a bit of a nervous wreck.
Well, do you think he will take the foot off the gas against Georgia and rest a few people? Or do you think he's going full pelt? What kind of team would you like to see against Georgia, Dan?
I think he shouldn't go too relaxed, because look what happened in the Portugal game. We won, but it wasn't convincing in my opinion. But I chuck Derry Lake back in there. I think he deserves a chance. I think we should rest Jack Morgan, because that guy, not being funny. But if I was a Scarlets fan now, realising, oh my God, why would you get rid of Jack Morgan to the Ospreys, your closest rivals, and he is being an outstanding co-captain with another Osprey just to rub injury insult to injury, I think you should rest Jack Morgan because he's just a fantastic player. But then I would rotate a few players, but not rotate all of them, but keep the majority so we don't get embarrassed by Georgia, because we all know what happened the last time.
Yeah, but we decided that was all Iestyn's fault. If he hadn't have been there, it would have been fine. So what I will say with Jack Morgan is Jack Morgan was offered. He obviously came through the Scarlet system. He was developed as a Scarlet. He made his Welsh debut as a Scarlet. So we claim the development side of him, but him and his family have always been Osprey supporters. So when the contract came in, I think just from rumours that the Scarlets actually offered him a little bit more than the Ospreys, but his heart, you boys will know yourself, if your heart's in a place and it was fractionally more to stay where you are, or to go to the club that you've been brought up on and the club that you love and the club that your dad's going, son, I know where you're going. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the guy was class for us. He was absolutely class for us. And I keep saying this, and people don't understand what I mean. Running a 77 back row, yes, we've got 2 sevens on the pitch. So Jack Morgan on one side of the scrum and Josh McLeod on the other side of the scrum. 2 of the best Jacqueline sevens probably in the URC. And nobody got anywhere near us. Our only problem that season was people kept, it was last season, we kept getting sent off. But if we just, we'd win the ball, we just did bugger all with it. So, those 2 were absolutely destructive. And that's why I'd like to see him on a pitch with Tommy Reffel, just because I think those 2 would work. It takes a while to run a 77 back row, but when it works, it's a thing of beauty. And I think Jack Morgan and Reffel will be the 2 players that can really make that work. If anybody's going to make it work, those 2 are the people that are going to make it work. So what about you then Iestyn? What are we going to see for the rest of the World Cup? Let's put it that way. How are we going to finish the World Cup?
Well, I'm really not sure because that if the quarterfinals against Argentina, you could be either spot on or ridiculously wrong in terms of any prediction you make. So I don't really want to put something out there, so I'm gonna stick to that, and I'm gonna say if someone could speak to me, preferably after the quarterfinal, I might give a prediction what the rest of the tournament's going to be like. Because if you look at the other side of the draw, that's chaos as well, because there's 4 sides who are quite capable of beating each other, and you're thinking that's a real head scratching who you're going to predict to win in those games. And okay, you might have an England-Fiji clash, which England could easily now rock up and win with their form they've hit now. So the short answer is I really don't know, but yeah, if I had to stick something out the line, I'm still thinking France might go all the way. I don't know. It's just something in me. I know they've lost Intermac. I know Dupont is putting a bit of metal in them, but even if Dupont is out to the quarterfinals, I say, and you got Charlie Bear and Maxime Lucu, who constantly play with each other in Bordeaux. So it's not like there's a halfback combination that don't know each other. It's like the first time they ever played with each other. It's a halfback combination that's a top half of the table, the top 14 side who are quite good. So my instinct still got France. I think Ireland will break the quarterfinal curse, as everyone's really wanting them not to, but I think they will. And now thinking about it, I think Wales might get to a semi-final, but don't quote me, don't sniff it out and put it everywhere, because I really don't know.
So I won't snip it out and put it out there, but what I will say is on the Rap podcast, so Carwin, who's the Osprey guy on there, said something very complimentary about the Scarlets once. So I definitely snipped that bit, and I definitely repeated that and put that out there on social media just to wind him up. Well, I won't do that with your prediction, mate. You're safe on that. Gents, tonight has been an absolute pleasure. We didn't manage to get to talk about the kit or the pre-season the game against one of the South African sides that's going to be up in the Stoop, I think. So yeah, that's the one. So we've got plenty to talk about next week, and we've got the Dragons game, and then it's the Cardiff game after that, if I'm right, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the I think both regional games are on the Friday night, I think. So yeah, it's a bit of a kick in the teeth if you wanted to go to watch both, but at least you got one.
Well, it gives us plenty to talk about next week, gents. So thank you very much for your time this evening. It has been a pleasure. That is the end of the first Ospreys Eyrie. Thank you very much. Have a good night, gents. All the best. Thank you for listening to the Ospreys Eyrie podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to us, as it really helps spread the word. You can find us on all the usual social media channels or email us on welshregionalrugbypod@gmail.com. And remember, whatever the question, rugby is always the answer.
Sports Social Podcast Network.